Positioning is how an unsupported man stops being treated like potential and starts becoming evidence. Because the wound is not just that they doubted you. The wound is that part of you still wants the same people who ignored your discipline, laughed at your ambition, and judged your future by your past to finally admit they were wrong. That need is expensive. Machiavelli understood that men judge first by appearance, then by proof, and only rarely by intention. So if your value is hidden, scattered, emotional, inconsistent, or impossible to measure, the world does not call you underestimated. It calls you irrelevant. But the trap is not to become loud, bitter, or desperate for attention. The move is colder than that. Name the man you are becoming. Own one territory. Build visible proof every week. Control your signals until people no longer have to understand you to recognize your weight. Because the unsupported man does not become undeniable by being believed. He becomes undeniable by making disbelief cost too much. And this is not theory. Bezos used positioning before Amazon looked inevitable. Tesla used it when electric cars were still treated as weak. Jobs used it when Apple had to become culturally dangerous again. Machiavelli named the law earlier. People judge first by what appears, then by what produces consequences. So the question is not whether you have potential. The question is whether your potential has become visible enough to change how people are forced to rank you. Here is the question most ambitious men avoid. What if they are not ignoring you because they hate you? What if they are ignoring you because your position is unclear? That is colder, because hatred at least means you are visible. Resistance at least means you have weight. But being unclear means the world does not know where to place you. You say you are ambitious. So are millions of men. You say you are disciplined. Where is the evidence? You say you are different. Different how? Different from whom? Different in what battlefield? This is where positioning becomes more than marketing. Positioning is not a slogan. It is not a logo. It is not looking impressive online. Positioning is the mental territory you occupy in the minds of others. And if you do not choose that territory, people will assign one to you. They will position you as the guy who talks, the guy who plans, the guy who is still figuring it out, the guy with potential. And potential is a polite word people use when your proof has not arrived yet. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are." That is not motivational. That is a law of perception. Most people will never study your soul. They will judge your signals, your results, your consistency, and the consequences of underestimating you. So the real question is not, why do they not believe in me? The real question is, what have I made impossible for them to deny? If you never understand positioning, you will spend years with hidden value and public weakness. You will work hard but remain invisible. You will become useful but not necessary. You will have ambition but no authority. You will explain your dream to people who benefit from keeping you emotionally dependent on their approval. And the most dangerous part is this: you will start confusing being misunderstood with being special. That is how many men rot. They do not fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because their intelligence has no direction, no proof, no market signal, no reputation, and no strategic position. A man with no positioning is always negotiating from weakness. In work, he waits to be noticed. In business, he competes by price. In relationships, he tries to be chosen. In family, he keeps explaining himself to people who still see the old version of him. In society, he becomes one more ambitious man with no evidence. Machiavelli said men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. In other words, people judge what they can see before they ever touch the truth of who you are. Modern psychology confirms the same brutal mechanism. Nalini Ambady and Robert Rosenthal's research on thin slices found that people make meaningful judgments from very brief observations of expressive behavior, sometimes under 5 minutes. Your speech, Posture, tone, consistency, presentation, and visible output are not decoration. They are evidence people use before they know you. So if your signals are weak, scattered, emotional, or inconsistent, do not be surprised when the world treats you as low value. The world is not reading your intentions. It is reading your position. Look at Jeff Bezos. In 1997, Amazon was still fragile compared to what it later became. It was not yet the empire people recognize today. Bezos did not position Amazon as a bookstore trying hard. He positioned it around a cold principle, customer obsession, and long-term market leadership. In Amazon's 1997 shareholder letter, the company reported serving more than 1.5 million customers, reaching $147.8 million in revenue, and growing 838% that year. That matters because Amazon was surrounded by aggressive competition and skepticism. The pressure was real. The market did not owe Bezos belief. Investors did not owe him patience. Competitors did not owe him room to breathe. And customers did not care about his private ambition. They cared about what Amazon could prove. So Bezos chose a territory, not books. Customer obsession, scale, brand, infrastructure, long-term value. He did not beg the market to understand Amazon's future. He built proof that forced the market to update its judgment. That is the first lesson. If your future is invisible, people will judge your present as final. If your proof is weak, people will treat your ambition as noise. But when your position becomes clear and your evidence becomes visible, disbelief becomes more expensive. Now look at Elon Musk and Tesla. Before Tesla became a symbol of electric dominance, electric cars were often perceived as slow, weak, ugly, limited, or unserious. The category itself was disrespected. That is important because Tesla was not only fighting competitors, Tesla was fighting an inherited belief. In 2006, Musk described the first Tesla master plan with ruthless simplicity. Build a sports car. Use that money to build an affordable car. Then use that money to build an even more affordable car. Then the Roadster gave the first proof. Tesla announced regular production of the 2008 Roadster with 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration in 3.9 seconds and an EPA rating of 135 miles per gallon equivalent. That was not just a car. That was an attack on an assumption. The old assumption said electric cars were weak. Tesla answered with speed. The old assumption said electric cars were boring. Tesla answered with desire. The old assumption said electric cars were moral but not powerful. Tesla answered with performance, technology, and future status. Power lesson. When a category disrespects you, do not ask for sympathy. Build a result that humiliates the old assumption. That is positioning, not noise, not begging, not please see my potential. Positioning says, this is the territory, this is the enemy, this is the proof, this is the cost of dismissing me. Now bring it back to you. You may not be building Amazon or Tesla, but the mechanism is the same. Your family has positioned you by your past. Your friends have positioned you by your current rank. Your employer has positioned you by your usefulness. Your old environment has positioned you as familiar, safe, predictable, and non-threatening. And unless you build a stronger position, their old definition wins. This is why many unsupported men feel trapped. They think they need support. But what they really need is a new position backed by proof. Support is emotional. Positioning is strategic. Support says, I hope they believe in me. Positioning says, I will build until their belief is irrelevant. If this truth hits you, then stop false progress. You already know the difference between consuming power and building it. The real problem is not that nobody sees you yet. The real problem is that you still lack a private system strong enough to turn discipline, proof, positioning, funnels, leverage, and self-command into visible force. On Patreon, I go deeper into the private frameworks and unfiltered breakdowns behind this doctrine. It is not for men who want comfort. It is for men who are done mistaking motion for evidence. The decision is yours. Here is the cold truth. The world does not reward the man you are becoming privately. It rewards the man it can recognize publicly. That does not mean you become fake. It means you stop hiding behind depth that has no evidence. You stop using pain as identity. You stop calling yourself underestimated when you may simply be unproven. And you begin to build a position. There are 8 powers. Power 1. Name the man you are becoming. The unsupported man must define his future identity before the world defines him by his past. But this cannot be fantasy. I will be rich is not positioning. I am becoming disciplined is too vague. I am becoming the man whose proof makes permission irrelevant is sharper because it contains direction, identity, enemy, and outcome. You need a sentence that cuts through your weakness. Not to post online, not to impress strangers, not to make yourself feel powerful for 5 minutes. You need it to govern your behavior when nobody is watching and nobody is clapping. Ask yourself, what man am I building? What old identity must die? What behavior no longer belongs to this position? If your new position is real, it must cost you something. It must cost you excuses. It must cost you lazy associations. It must cost you emotional reactivity. It must cost you the pleasure of being understood by people who are not qualified to judge the road. Most men want a new identity with no funeral. They want to become respected while keeping the habits of a man who is easy to dismiss. They want the authority of discipline with the lifestyle of impulse. They want the reputation of seriousness while still speaking loosely, reacting emotionally, and announcing plans they have not earned the right to announce. That is not transformation. That is costume. A position is not what you say when you feel inspired. A position is what remains when pressure tests you. If you claim to be becoming a man of proof, then your week must show proof. If you claim to be becoming a man of leverage, then your decisions must reduce dependence. If you claim to be becoming a man of discipline, then your environment must make weakness harder to repeat. A man who cannot name himself will be named by others, and they will usually name him by the weakest version they remember. That is why family doubt hurts so deeply. They are not always responding to your future. They are responding to the archive they have of you. They remember your inconsistency, your failed starts, your emotional reactions, your broken promises, your old dependency. They may not be evil, but they are loyal to evidence you gave them before you became serious. So stop demanding that they update their judgment before you update your proof. Name the man, kill the old behaviors, make the new identity expensive enough to become real. Power. 2. Choose the territory you will own. A territory is the mental space you want to occupy, not a random interest, a battlefield. Choose it wrong, and you spend years becoming impressive in a direction nobody associates with value. For this audience, the territories are clear. Discipline for unsupported men. Status through proof. Solitude into power. Money through leverage. Emotional control after betrayal. Becoming undeniable without permission. Your territory must answer one question. When people think of this problem, why should they think of you? If you are trying to be known for everything, you will be remembered for nothing. This is why scattered men remain invisible. They want to be deep, creative, strategic, spiritual, masculine, wealthy, intelligent, mysterious, and respected all at once. But the world does not reward complexity first. It rewards clarity. A scattered man may be talented, but he gives the world no category to remember. This is the humiliation many ambitious men refuse to face. They are not ignored because they have nothing inside them. They are ignored because nothing about them is clear enough to travel through another person's mind. People cannot repeat what they cannot reduce. They cannot recommend what they cannot name. They cannot trust what changes shape every month. One month, you are the discipline guy. Next month, you are the money guy. Then you are the spiritual guy. Then you are the dark psychology guy. Then you are the entrepreneur. Then you disappear because attention slowed down and silence felt like rejection. That is not positioning. That is identity panic. Choose the territory. Then repeat it until people are tired of hearing it. Then repeat it until they finally remember. This is where ego gets tested. Because in the beginning, repetition feels humiliating. You feel like nobody is listening. You feel like you are saying the same thing into the void. You feel tempted to change directions just to feel alive. But the market does not remember you because you are constantly new. It remembers you because you become unavoidable in one mental space. Amazon did not become powerful by asking the world to see every possible version of itself at once. Tesla did not defeat the old electric car assumption by scattering its message. Jobs did not bring Apple back by being vague about culture, creativity, and defiance. They chose a territory. Then, proof made the territory real. Your life works the same way. Pick the battlefield where your pain can become proof. Pick the problem your discipline can solve. Pick the space where your story gives you unfair emotional endurance. Then build there, because until you own a territory, your ambition is homeless. Power 3. Attack. One false belief, relentlessly. Every strong position needs an enemy, not a person, a false belief. For the unsupported man, the enemies are obvious. Support must come before progress. Hard work speaks for itself. If they understand me, they will believe in me. Pain makes me special. Being useful means being valued. Choose one false belief and attack it until your message has teeth. Because people do not follow vague improvement. They follow conflict. They follow a war between who they are and who they could become. This is why soft self-improvement dies quickly. It gives advice without an enemy. It says, be consistent, believe in yourself, stay focused, keep going. Fine. But the unsupported man does not need more soft instruction. He needs a war map. He needs to know what belief is stealing his years. He needs to see the hidden dependency behind his pain. He needs to understand that every time he explains his ambition to a weak room, he may not be communicating. He may be begging for permission in a more respectable form. That is a dangerous realization because once you see it, you lose the comfort of blaming everyone else. Machiavelli's world was not built on fantasies of human goodness. He studied incentives, fear, reputation, appearances, and consequences. His thought was dangerous because he refused to describe men as they should be. He described them as they are. Do the same with your own life. Stop positioning yourself around what sounds noble. Position yourself around what produces power. If the false belief is hard work speaks for itself, attack it every week. Show that unframed work can remain invisible. Show that useful men can be exploited. Show that contribution without leverage can become a cage. Then replace the false belief with a colder law. Work must be visible, scarce, measurable, and attached to a position. If the false belief is support must come first, attack it every week. Show that early progress often has to be created before support appears. Show that waiting for belief can become emotional slavery. Then replace it with a colder law. Evidence attracts more belief than explanation. If the false belief is pain makes me special, attack it without mercy. Pain does not automatically make you deep. Pain can make you bitter, distracted, jealous, avoidant, and addicted to your own story. Pain only becomes power when converted into skill, structure, proof, and leverage. This is how your position gets teeth. You are not just saying what you believe, you are killing what keeps your audience weak. Power 4. Build a visible proof engine. No proof means no leverage. No leverage means no power. A proof engine is a weekly system that turns your ambition into visible evidence. Publish, document, measure, improve, repeat. Not when you feel inspired, not when someone believes in you, not when the perfect time arrives. Weekly. If you are building a body, show the discipline. If you are building a skill, show the output. If you are building a business, show the offer, the result, the market feedback. If you are building authority, show the insight repeatedly until people associate the territory with your name. Most men do not need more belief. They need more receipts. Every week without visible proof is another week your old identity remains evidence against you. That line should bother you, because the world is not waiting for your explanation. The world is comparing what you say against what you can show. Your proof engine must answer simple questions. What did I produce this week? What became more visible? What can be measured? What can be shown? What can be repeated? What makes me harder to dismiss than last month? If you cannot answer those questions, you are still emotionally attached to potential. And potential is not power. Power 5. Control your signals. People judge before they investigate. That is not unfair. That is human nature. Your speech is a signal. Your body is a signal. Your clothes are a signal. Your digital presence is a signal. Your digital presence is a signal. Your emotional reactions are signals. Your friends are signals. Your consistency is a signal. Your silence is a signal. Your desperation is a signal. Your standards are signals. Every day, you are teaching the world where to place you. The unsupported man cannot afford careless signals. He does not have inherited status protecting him. He does not have a family reputation opening doors. He does not have a powerful network explaining his value when he is absent. He does not have rich parents smoothing over his mistakes. He does not have rooms full of people saying, "Give him a chance. He comes from good people." So his signals must become sharper. He must speak less loosely, react less emotionally, present himself with more discipline. Stop announcing what he has not built. Stop asking weak rooms to validate strong ambitions. This is where many men lose respect without noticing it. They say they are serious, but their calendar looks unserious. They say they want power, but their attention is owned by entertainment. They say they want money, but they avoid measuring their output. They say they want respect, but they keep explaining themselves to people who have no incentive to understand. They say they are done needing approval, but one comment, one laugh, one cold reaction, one family doubt can still change their behavior for a week. That is not positioning. That is emotional leakage. And the world reads leakage. It reads the man who talks too much when he feels insecure. It reads the man who over-explains because he wants to be accepted. It reads the man who posts with intensity for 3 days, disappears for 3 weeks, then returns with another declaration. It reads the man who says he is building but has nothing measurable to show. It reads the man who wants to be seen as dangerous but cannot control his own impulses. Machiavelli warned that appearances and results carry enormous weight. The vulgar are always taken by what a thing seems to be and by what comes of it. This does not mean become a fraud. It means understand the arena. Substance without signal stays hidden. Signal without substance becomes performance. Power requires both. If you have substance but no signal, the world may never find you. If you have signal but no substance, the world may notice you first and punish you later. The stronger man builds both together. He becomes useful and visible, skilled and legible, disciplined and recognizable. Quiet enough to conserve power, clear enough to be placed correctly. That is the game. Not because the world is fair, because the world is fast. People do not have unlimited time to study your private depth. They make judgments from what they can see, what they can remember, what they can measure, and what they can repeat to others. If your life sends mixed signals, people will not pause to decode your complexity. They will assign you a lower category and move on. So ask yourself with brutality, what does my speech signal? What does my body signal? What does my online presence signal? What does my work signal? What does my emotional reaction signal? What does my circle signal? What does my inconsistency signal? Not what do I intend, what do I signal? Because intention is private. Signal is public. And public reality is where reputation is built. Power 6, create a reputation before you need it. Weak men wait until they need opportunity before they become visible. Then their desperation leaks through everything. They network when they need help. They post when they need attention. They negotiate when they have no alternatives. They ask for support after years of invisibility. They try to become known only when hunger has already made them impatient. That is backwards. Reputation must be built before hunger exposes you. Reputation is accumulated positioning. It is what people expect from you before you enter the room. It is what your name carries when you are not present. It is the silent summary of your repeated proof. And if you build it early enough, opportunity approaches before desperation speaks. That is a different kind of power. Because the desperate man asks from weakness, the positioned man receives from gravity. The desperate man tries to convince. The positioned man has already taught the world how to interpret him. The desperate man says, "Please see me now." The positioned man has been visible long enough that the request does not feel sudden. This is where Steve Jobs matters. When Jobs returned to Apple, Apple was not merely selling machines. It had to reclaim a position in culture, creativity, defiance, taste. People who think different. The Steve Jobs archive records Jobs introducing Think Different to Apple employees in 1997, and Apple later marked the iMac beginning in 1998 as part of a defining era of Apple design. Pressure. Apple had lost clarity and needed to be remembered again. Action. Jobs narrowed the identity. First, proof. Products like the iMac made the identity visible. Power lesson. Reputation is not created by saying, "We are back." It is created when positioning and proof move together. Your life works the same way. Do not tell them you changed. Become impossible to confuse with the old version. That is the standard. If you have to keep saying, "I am different now," you are not different enough yet. If people can still predict your weakness, your position has not changed. If your old environment can still pull you back into old reactions, your signal is not protected. If your proof is too rare, too private, or too inconsistent, your reputation has not accumulated enough weight. Reputation is built before the invitation, before the promotion, before the deal, before the opportunity, before the room opens. You build it in the quiet weeks when nobody is rewarding you. You build it when your output is still small. You build it when people are not clapping. You build it when repeating the same territory feels boring. You build it when your old identity is still louder than your new proof. That is why most men fail here. They want reputation as a reward, not as a discipline. They want to be respected before they have created a record. But reputation is a record. It is the residue of repeated behavior. If you are the right viewer, stop false progress. You already know that scattered effort is not the same as strategic construction. The real problem is that you have been trying to build power without a deeper operating system for proof, positioning, discipline, funnels, leverage, and self-command. Inside Patreon, the private frameworks go deeper than public videos can go, with unfiltered breakdowns built for men who are serious about becoming harder to dismiss. It is not for men who want motivation without responsibility. It is for men who understand that hidden ambition must become visible architecture. The decision is yours. Power 7. Become the category, not just another option. The highest level of positioning is when people stop comparing you normally. They say, "He is the guy for this." That is the move. Not one more disciplined man. The disciplined man who builds without support. Not one more creator. The creator who turns abandonment into power. Not one more worker. The operator who makes chaos measurable. Not one more entrepreneur. The man who builds leverage from nothing. To become the category, you must repeat one promise until it becomes attached to your name. Most men fail here because repetition bruises their ego. They get bored before the market remembers. They change lanes because silence feels humiliating. They mistake novelty for progress. But positioning rewards endurance. You do not become undeniable by changing identities every time attention gets low. You become undeniable by making your position so clear, so repeated, and so backed by proof that people can no longer mislabel you. This is where the unsupported man must become colder, because he usually has a wound around being unseen. When nobody reacts quickly, he does not just feel bored, he feels abandoned again. When a post gets ignored, it feels like family doubt. When a project receives no attention, it feels like social rejection. When the market does not respond fast enough, it feels like proof that he was foolish to try. So he changes direction. He calls it strategy. But often it is emotional escape. He was not changing because the data demanded it. He was changing because silence threatened his identity. That is why becoming the category requires self-command. You must be able to survive the humiliation of being clear before being recognized. You must be able to repeat the territory before the world rewards the repetition. You must be able to watch less serious men get quick attention without abandoning the deeper position you are building. This is not passive patience. This is aggressive consistency. You are not waiting. You are accumulating. Every piece of proof adds weight. Every repeated message adds association. Every controlled signal reduces confusion. Every visible result makes the old label weaker. Every week of discipline makes the future easier to believe. And eventually, if you endure long enough, people stop asking, "What is he trying to do?" They start saying, "That is what he does." Then later, they stop saying, "That is what he does." They start saying, "He is the guy for that." That is category ownership. That is when comparison changes. A normal man competes against other options. A positioned man becomes the reference point. A normal man is chosen when convenient. A positioned man is remembered before the choice is made. A normal man explains why he is valuable. A positioned man has trained the world to associate his name with a specific value. That is the level you are after. Not attention, not applause, not temporary validation. A place in the mind, a territory no one can easily take. Power 8. Let the old world misunderstand you. This is the hardest power, because part of you still wants the old world to clap. Your family, your old friends, the people who knew you when you were weaker, the people who benefit from seeing you as familiar, the people who remember the version of you that you are trying to bury. But some rooms cannot recognize the man you are becoming because they are loyal to the man you were. That is not always evil. Sometimes it is memory. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is their own limited map of what life can be. Sometimes your ambition threatens the agreement that everyone was supposed to stay understandable. Sometimes your discipline exposes their excuses. Sometimes your seriousness makes the room uncomfortable because it proves change was possible. But either way, you cannot keep shrinking your position so old rooms feel comfortable. You must let them misunderstand the early stage. Let them doubt the process. Let them mock the discipline. Let them think you are doing too much. Let them call your silence arrogance. Let them mistake your focus for distance. Let them say you changed, as if remaining the same was the price of loyalty. Because if you build long enough, the same silence that once made you invisible becomes the thing that makes you dangerous. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. In your life, this does not mean intimidation. It does not mean cruelty. It does not mean becoming hard for performance. It means becoming a man whose discipline creates consequences. A man people think twice before dismissing. A man whose absence costs something. A man whose presence has weight. That is not cruelty, that is gravity. Most unsupported men never reach this level because they are still negotiating emotionally with the old world. They say they want to move forward, but they keep checking whether the same people approve. They say they do not care, but one comment pulls them back. They say they are focused, but they keep explaining the plan to people who only understand the past. You must stop giving the old world veto power over your new position. This does not mean hatred. Hatred still ties you to them. Revenge still makes them central. Bitterness still gives them ownership of your energy. The colder move is separation without performance. Build. Let them misread it. Improve. Let them call it obsession. Become disciplined. Let them call it distance. Become valuable. Let them arrive late. Because the goal is not to win an argument with your old environment. The goal is to build a life that no longer requires the argument. So kill the old belief. The old belief says, if they understand me, they will support me. The strategic belief says, if I build proof, support becomes optional. The old belief says, my pain should make people respect me. The strategic belief says, my pain is only useful if I convert it into skill, evidence, and leverage. The old belief says, I am being underestimated. The strategic belief says, maybe, but first I will become undeniable enough to prove it. This is the shift. You are not an abandoned man waiting for recognition. You are an unowned man building a position. No inherited name, no safety net, no applause, no permission. Good. That means no one owns your rise. But understand the price. You must stop leaking power through explanation. You must stop changing identities because patience feels humiliating. You must stop asking weak rooms to validate a strong future. You must stop believing hidden ambition deserves visible respect. The man you claim to be needs evidence, and positioning is how you organize that evidence until the world has no choice but to recognize your weight. This is where the unsupported man becomes dangerous in the cleanest sense of the word. Not dangerous because he threatens people. Dangerous because he can no longer be controlled by their approval. Dangerous because his discipline is no longer dependent on applause. Dangerous because his proof speaks before his need does. Dangerous because his identity is not rented from the opinions of people who never paid the cost of his ambition. That is freedom, not the loud kind. The colder kind. The kind where you no longer need to perform pain to be seen. You no longer need to explain your ambition to feel real. You no longer need doubters to admit they were wrong in order to keep moving. You no longer confuse attention with authority. You no longer confuse usefulness with value. You no longer confuse being misunderstood with being special. You become measurable, you become legible, you become positioned, and once you become positioned, the game changes. But positioning alone is not enough, because once you become visible, another test begins. Visibility attracts judgment, proof attracts envy, reputation attracts pressure, and the moment people realize you are no longer the old version, they will try to reposition you. They will call you arrogant, obsessed, changed, cold, selfish, too serious, too ambitious. That is where most men retreat. They finally become visible, then panic when visibility creates resistance. But resistance is not always a warning. Sometimes resistance is confirmation that your old position is dying. This is why your identity must be stronger than their reaction. If their praise can inflate you, their criticism can control you. If their approval can direct you, their doubt can delay you. If their recognition can feed you, their silence can starve you. So build the position before you need it. Protect the signal before it is tested. Repeat the proof before people understand it. Hold the territory before it becomes fashionable. Let the old world misunderstand before the new world recognizes. The unsupported man does not become undeniable by being believed. He becomes undeniable by making disbelief cost too much. And understand what that really means. It means when they doubt you, your output continues. When they mock you, your discipline continues. When they ignore you, your proof continues. When they misunderstand you, your position sharpens. When they arrive late, you do not stop to punish them. You keep building, because punishment is still attention. Proof is power. If this video forced you to confront the truth, do not leave with emotion. Leave with a decision. Comment. Undeniable. If you are ready to build a position the world can no longer ignore, not because you need to announce yourself, but because some men need to mark the moment they stop asking to be believed and start becoming evidence. Build the position. Protect the signal. Repeat the proof. Let the old world misunderstand. Let the market update slowly. Let the doubters arrive late. The unsupported man does not become undeniable by being believed. He becomes undeniable by making disbelief cost too much.